Yep.
Okay, I'll let everybody in. Good afternoon, everybody. Barry here from Mixon Travel. As always, it's Tuesday, it's 3 o'clock, and we've got another inspiring presentation. Today, we're joined by David from Tauck, who is joining us from South Australia, free from lockdown once again. Yeah. And we've got a relatively small group today, so we can actually answer some individual questions if anybody has any. I'd probably encourage you to just type them into the message box, which you can see by, if you hover on the bottom of your screen, there's a little chat box. Click on that and that will open up an extra field and you can send a question through, and I'm happy to share with that with David towards the end. But for the minute, I'm going to hand straight over to David. The floor is yours, mate, and I'll come back in towards the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Barry, and hello to everyone that's joined this afternoon. As Barry said, I'm down in Adelaide. We've had an interesting week, but it looks like we've come out the other side, which is extremely positive, because I think right now, after the kind of year we've had, especially in tourism, you know, every knock's another big knock, but we do hold on to hope, and that's what we do in tourism. We've got hope that we will see this improve, and hopefully improve quickly, and all the things happening around the world that will allow us to get back out there, because that's what we love to do. So you can get a great view of my kitchen here. My office downstairs is being renovated, so this is where we're working at the moment. So a very different world that we're in at the moment. As Barry said, yeah, my name's David Clark. I head up the Tauck business here in Australia. We obviously have operations here in Australia with tours in Australia and New Zealand, but our main focus is obviously sending people on Tauck tours all around the world, especially in the past, obviously to the US, to Europe, Antarctica, Africa, Asia, and the likes. We travel to every destination. I wanted to highlight this afternoon just quickly what makes Tauck so unique. I think we're a very different tour company, and a very special tour company. We've been run by the Tauck family for almost 95 years. Give you an update of how we're trying to manage through what has been the most challenging year in our 95-year history. You know, we've been rested now, we call it, of operating tours for 8 months, and there are some small glimpses of hope in the very near future, especially in the US, but probably not for our Australian New Zealand guests for just a little while longer. But with all this great news of vaccines and the effectiveness they're having, that gives us great positivity moving into the next period. And then also update on one of the new products that we're going to have this year on the rivers in Europe, which is the Andorinha, the new vessel, which was going to be launched in April, so it hasn't been launched as yet. And cruising through the Douro in Portugal, just a stunning new destination for us, and some different tours, and a quick look at that vessel as well. So we'll cover quite a bit, but please ask some questions if you have any. And obviously at the end of this, you know, Barry and his team at Bicton, who have been an incredible partner of Tauck's for a long, long time, we'll be able to answer those for you as well as we plan travel once again. So really quickly, the gentleman in the middle there is Arthur Tauck Sr. So Arthur Tauck Sr. was working in a bank back in New Jersey, and he actually spilled all the coins down the bottom of one of those tubes that used to shoot them up, and he got fired from his job. And his boss said, "Until you're not going to work in a bank." So he actually invented those coin trays where you actually line up all the quarters. And he started traveling around, but soon was making more money from those than he would have in the bank. So one day he basically said he's seen all these great destinations in his own backyard. He thought he'd actually take some people with him to show them. So he devised this tour, and he basically put it on sale for 6 people, and he charged $69 for a week-long jaunt. Everything was included, and one of his statements that we live by today is that he doesn't allow any grumps or any pessimists. So we stick to that as we do today. So that spirit is very much alive with the company now. And from that one humble tour that he ran, it became very popular, and that was really the beginning of Tauck Tours. The one thing that he always lived by was that Tauck and is well renowned for doing the right thing. And every time we make decisions, it's what's the right thing to do, whether it's looking after guests, what type of departures we take, where we travel to. So every decision we kind of make at Tauck is quite an easy decision, and deciding where we go, we get a lot of feedback from our guests, and we change our tours based on a lot of that feedback. How we can improve, again, we listen to our guests, and I'll talk a little bit about Arthur Tauck Jr. in a moment, and he does a lot of the guest feedback and tells us where we can improve in hotels. We have extremely high standards for our tour operators, from the people that we partner with, whether it's in river cruise vessels, cruise ships and the likes. Because basically, Arthur Tauck Senior decided that travel will change people's lives, and to be our best selves and to have experiences that will change us forever, you need to travel with the very, very best. So the one thing, there's a couple of major parts of Tauck that we're very proud of. One is about the unique and exclusive access that we have. So one of our taglines being, how you see the world matters, the sense of values that really break us into what makes us different from a lot of the other tour operators and cruise operators out there. We believe that no one should settle for anything that they could have put together themselves or done by themselves. So, or anything that you could do with any other tour operator. So our team of people around the world is out there with the singular focus to find the exceptional for you. And the exceptional could be an intimate experience with a local artisan, a restaurant that you could never get into on your own, inside the park access, or an after-hours tour of the Vatican. One of our tours that travels through Paris, what we've always highlighted is that we have such a great relationship with the Louvre that we're one of the only operators that offer an after-hours tour of the Louvre. And you can imagine that experience of travel as we kind of take ourselves back there, and we haven't traveled for a little while, which is quite obviously a bit sad. But if you can put yourself in that position of, you've been to the Louvre and you've traveled with 5,000, 10,000 people all through that day, or with a Tauck tour, you're seeing the Mona Lisa with 20 other people. Now that's obviously going to be more and more important as we move into the future and how travel will change. We don't know everything yet, but we're obviously starting to predict and starting to plan for the future. So exclusive access is something that we really pride ourselves on. We've got really strong relationships with so many operators out there, so many hotels, and it makes us very different to a lot of the other tour operators out there. And one of the other parts of our business is traveling with the best. And when we say travel with the best, we're not being sort of arrogant and saying it's about, us and we're the best. One of the distinct parts of Tauck is that every tour, every river cruise, every cruise is that we have our own cruise directors, our own tour directors that have been with the company for, on average, 10 years, which means a lot of our tour directors have been with the company for 20, 30 years. It was an incredible induction into the company when I joined, and our office is up in Connecticut. And everyone you talk to has been in the company for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's an incredible place to work, and it's got a great tradition of all these amazing tour directors that know the destinations they're going to really, really well. So you're going to be looked after, you're going to get a lot of secrets and behind the scenes kind of tours, and that length of service matters. And it's also about the people that you're sitting next to, at the dinner tables. It's the people you're traveling with, the people that take Tauck tours. Generally, they all have that sort of similar way of thinking. They want to see the world. They're intrigued by culture, intrigued by food, intrigued by wine, sports and the likes. And when you travel on a Tauck tour, you inevitably will meet some fantastic people and have a lot in common with them as well. And hence we have a great repeat rate at Tauck. 50% of the people that travel with Tauck every year have traveled with us before. And about 83% have actually been referred by a friend. So another 33% on top of that. So, we get a lot of great advertising through just word of mouth, through people saying that we had a great tour with Tauck and we're going to go back again and again. Now, the last part of this here is the travel beyond ordinary. And travel beyond ordinary is something now we're starting to think about as to what does travel look like beyond, now, and what's it going to look like in the future. So as we said, our commitment never wavers, and it's to earn your trust by always doing the right thing. And as we explore the world together again, this is going to be more important than ever as we adapt to living and traveling in the presence of that horrible word, COVID-19. So we're 95 years young this year, and our ability to weather many storms over the decades is something that we've talked about quite often. We've been through huge amounts of things over those 95 years, whether it's, the Great Depression, whether it's wars, whether it's some of the other pandemics and things like SARS that we've gone through, and also terrorism and the likes. And also just day-to-day, you know, weather-related problems when, you know, the level of the river is not at the right level and we've had to change itineraries quickly. So we've had a lot of these discussions over the past. We've got a group of people stationed in our office that are there to support these things. And we're starting to think about very seriously, what does travel look like? And I'll talk about our Tauck Travel Well Pledge and what that means for traveling in the future. And it's obviously constantly evolving, but we're taking a lot of advice right now as to what travel will look like and how we can best protect our guests the best we possibly can. We want to keep people safe. We want to mitigate all the risk we possibly can. And so moving into this, we're obviously on pause right now for operating all tours until the end of this year. Now, speaking to Australians, we know that, you know, come January, probably very few things will change, sadly. But we are in the US starting to look at what travel could look like, because the US is good and bad, a bit of a disaster in terms of obviously the outbreak there, but they are starting to live with it and are starting to look at how they can manage living with it. So we did send a tour out the other day with some of our key staff to look at how it feels to be wearing a mask, to be social distancing when people check into hotels, to be boarding coaches at different rates, to be going through museums like this. So we're starting to get, you know, a lot of that information as to how we're going to restart when it is safe to do so. And obviously we'll only do this when it is safe to do so. So we are a few tours next year that we're rested, but 2021 is still, you know, relatively well booked because a lot of people moved from 2020. So we're constantly reevaluating that. But we will be out on sale for 2022 soon as well, which we've had a lot of feedback will be a very, very busy year. So there are some positives, there are some good signs. You know, we're starting to really assess how that looks. And hopefully once we get through the end of 2020, we can have some positive thoughts about starting to book and really lock in our travels for the future. In terms of that Tauck Travel Well Pledge that I mentioned before, these are some of the protocols that we're already doing, and this is constantly changing and constantly getting updated because, you know, the environment that we're in is moving so quickly. So, you know, all of our field staff are obviously trained and enhanced health protocols, regular health screenings, face coverings worn in public gatherings, rigorous cleaning, all the likes, more intimate private dining, crowd-free sightseeing, on-ship crowd-free lounge areas and activities. So all of our tours and operations, given we're a small group tour operator, do fit into a lot of these protocols. But we are going to be asking our guests to take some of that responsibility with the Tauck Travel Well Pledge and make sure that they're accepting that the world has changed a little bit. So, you know, if people are refusing and it's common that everyone's wearing a mask, we're going to ask people to wear masks on our tours for the immediate future. Now, that may change, you know, in 6 months, in a year's time, but all of these things will be for the greater good so that we can get traveling again. Things like vaccines, obviously there's been a lot of information on vaccines, and we actually had a discussion about this last night with the US before they've kind of closed down for the week for Thanksgiving. You know, that's something that we will take very seriously. Qantas have already come out and said if you refuse to have a vaccine, you won't be traveling internationally. I'd say that will become pretty common in the industry, but who's to know at this stage? But I'd say that's a very, very likely outcome of all this. And the other part of this is that when we do release our new departures, we'll have a lot more flexibility around cancellations and deposits and final payments and things like that. Because again, it's such an uncertain time that, you know, we're a company that are not going to lock people into something when we're still not sure if we'll be running it or not. So there's a lot of, you know, flex for that. Well, one of the positives though that we've released, and this is just something that, again, moving with the times and making sure we're offering something that people love and really exciting, is private departures. So we've always been a small group business, and small groups for us is around that 20 to 24 people. And normal departures used to be about 40 to 44. But small groups were becoming the norm because more and more people were booking small groups. But private departures are actually a departure where from 10 to 24 people, you book out the entire departure with you and your friends. So it's a departure that's only booked for a certain group of people that all know each other that are going to travel with each other. So a group of friends or a family group or the likes. And it starts at 10 people. It's a tiny bit more expensive than our small groups, but you get complete ownership over that tour. It is a tour that is run on a Tauck itinerary. So it's not customizable every day, because that's not what people are doing Tauck tours for. They're not getting on the coach in the morning and say, we want to go here or we want to go there. It's still on our scheduled itineraries, but it's just your small group of people. And when we launched this over the last sort of 4 to 5 weeks ago, it has been incredibly popular. There's been a lot of interest, a lot of information gathering on private departures. We will run them pretty much on every land departure that we have. So whether that's the US or in Europe or the rest of the world, even in Australia and New Zealand in the future. Obviously, we can't run these on river cruises or cruises, because it doesn't really work that way, unless you do charter the entire vessel, of course. So that's something we're looking forward to running. And then moving into a bit more exciting news around what we are actually looking to plan ahead for. So if any of you on this call and on this webinar have been on a river cruise before, I was introduced to river cruising just a few years ago, and cruised on the Danube as my first trip with Tauck. And it's changed the way I want to travel forever. It was such an amazing experience. Just the access that you have to these small towns, the absolute amazing scenery, the dining, cruising through those beautiful areas of the Vachel Valley. It really did change how I like to travel. And I think the small group nature of river cruising is going to be very, very popular in the future, more popular than it's ever been. And so this will be one way that I think a lot of people will ease back into international traveling. So for us, river cruising has always been a really strong part of our business for about the last 25 to 30 years. We were one of the real innovators of river cruising in Europe. And it is something that we're really looking to enhance over the next few years. So the 2022 season that we're already starting to map out has already started getting a few bookings, and 21 is basically full. But as I was extremely exciting in terms of river cruising. The one thing I highlight with Tauck river cruising is that the word all-inclusive has taken on a bit of a different note to me. So every company talks about inclusive, and I think every company has a different kind of way of thinking about what all-inclusive means. All-inclusive is not when you get offered a walking tour during the day, and another tour costs you 30 euros or 40 euros or US dollars or whatever it is. That's not all inclusive by offering you one experience. All inclusive is all tours operated that day, and with Tauck it can be 3 or 4, are completely included in your fare. That's something that you can choose to do. You can change your mind, or you can go off on your own and take a bike out and go for a ride around one of the towns. But the tours are incredible, local guides plus our own guides, and really well looked after. All inclusive is drinks at any time of the day. So if you want a glass of champagne at lunch, or if you want a cocktail or anything like that, it is just going up to the bar and ordering your drink. It's not that time of day, or it's not this meal or whatever it is. So with Tauck, everything's included from the moment you get on board until the moment you get off. All gratuities are included for all your operators, all your tour operators. And one of the great things that Tauck offers, if you've traveled with Tauck or heard of Tauck, is we have something called a lanyap. Now, a lanyap means something a little bit extra. And I take you to this experience I had in Europe, and we were traveling on the bus to Salzburg. It was a beautiful coach, and we were sitting there, and our tour director came up to us and said, look, today for lunch, we don't have an organised lunch. We want everyone to be able to experience it on their own. So lunch was never included. So everyone was quite prepared to buy their lunch that day, because it was a separate tour into town. But they gave everyone 20 euros cash. And it was just a 20 euro note. And they said, this is just for your lunch today. So you've got some local currency. Here's a list of recommended restaurants. But they weren't restaurants that they were kind of forcing you to go to. They were organic, authentic, amazing places in town. And they said, if you don't want to buy lunch, you can buy chocolate. You can go and get a beer. But we just wanted to make sure you had some currency. And Tauck does that at every opportunity. And whether it's just giving you some coins for the bathroom in Europe or whatever it is, our tour directors and cruise directors are always there to make it as easy as possible. And those little things, everyone on that tour didn't really need the 20 euros, to be honest. I mean, our product is in that, premium and luxury range, but it was appreciated, the gesture, and it was appreciated the thought behind it. And I actually thought that was a great little initiative. One thing I also highlight is the hotels that we use pre and post on our river cruises and all around the world. They are of absolute premium nature. So Fairmonts, Four Seasons, Intercontinentals, Mandarins. You know, when we check in London for a lot of our tours, we use the Savoy. And there is something to be said about checking into the Savoy. It's a beautiful hotel. It's obviously got an incredible history, but it really is an experience to check into the Savoy versus, say, the Hilton Tower Bridge. And that's just the way it is. So we do use all these properties. They're absolutely amazing. And a lot of the time when we do events like we're doing even today, we will add an extra free night for people that participate in a webinar or something like that, and then go ahead and book one of their tours. And if you do go ahead and book, you know, Barry can help you out with that, and I'll set that up for Bicton Travel as one of our top partners. I won't go through too much of the fleet because really there are a lot of statistics, but what I will say is our cabins on board are extremely large, whether it's on any of our different vessels, being the Grace, Inspire, Joy and Saver, our larger vessels, 130 guests, the Sapphire, the Treasure, Emerald and Esprit, or the Andorinha, which is obviously our newest vessel, which I'll talk to. You can kind of see us covering it, but that's 84 guests there. So only 42 cabins. That's quite a small vessel in terms of how many people fit on it. But when I show you the images of the Andorinha in a second, I'll just click through here if that's okay. You'll see how spacious the actual vessel looks. It's stunning. It's brand new. It's actually never been sailed on as yet. It's done some tests. But it is ready for us to launch hopefully in 2021 for the Douro and Portugal season. The vessel itself is very spacious in terms of the restaurants and the dining and the lounges. You can see just the height and the light that comes in because obviously it travels in summer and it can be quite warm in those areas. So there's a few different innovations on this vessel that a lot of the other vessels don't have. A beautiful bar area there to watch the world go by. The cabins themselves and suites are extremely large, and large in terms of lots of areas to store things, areas to sit and watch the world go by. And obviously you can see the floor to ceiling glass there and the balconies that you can open those big doors and let the air come in. Really stunning. And that's a category 5, so that's not even our top category on the Andorinha. And then upstairs, I think it's a great little initiative, given that the cruises we go on there can be quite warm. We do have a lovely pool area and outer deck area as well. So if you're thinking you're traveling with a maximum of about 80 people, there is a huge amount of space. People can, you know, keep socially distant, do all the protocols, but also get on and off the vessel quite easily and quite quickly, and onto coaches and onto, you know, different tours and things like that as well. So very excited about the launch of this vessel. And again, talking a bit about travel, when you see this and you can imagine yourself getting back on one of these trips and back to the airport and feeling safe and secure, and knowing that as soon as you get off that plane, your Tauck guide will meet you at the airport. There'll be someone there to transfer you to the hotel. There'll be Tauck representatives and tour directors at the hotel to check you into the hotel. You don't go through the normal check-in at the hotel. And there'll be a meet and greet for the group of people. And then we'll be onwards on our journey. So, you know, talking to the business every week on the calls that we have about how we're going to restart and how we're going to do this safely and successfully, because we don't want to take the passion and the fun out of travel. We want all this to come back. These are the things that we're taking into account. And I think we could all picture ourselves. I know Barry's kind of not nodding yet, but he will, won't you, Barry? When we're back on board a trip like this, hopefully in the future, and thinking what a tough year 2020 was, but hopefully we're out the other side soon and we can get on with what we love doing, which is definitely travel. And again, this is the other end from where the swimming pool was. So this is another bar area, a dining area. So we've got a lot of areas on board this vessel. Some of the departures, again, won't go into too much detail given the time, but all of these are on our website. It's all in Australian dollars on our website. We are having brochures produced as we speak for 21 and 22. So we've got a commitment to the Australian market. They will be in Australian dollars. We're not going to print them yet. We will put them on our website and distribute them through our key travel advisor, travel agent partners as e-brochures to start with. But they're going to all come out for next year and the year past that in the next few weeks. But, you know, things like mixing in, obviously the Douro cruise, plus parts of Spain. That was extremely popular for 20, and already for 21 is pretty much full. Other parts just going through the whole Douro cruise. And then we do have our Bridges and Family program, where if people are looking to travel with their children, with their grandchildren, we have an amazing product for that called Tauck Bridges, and that would be on one of those cruises as well. So we were very excited about the Douro this year. As soon as I joined the company, it was the next big thing, and especially with the new vessel. Obviously 2020's been put to rest, but we have great hope for the future, and already we're seeing this being a really popular itinerary. It doesn't have to be that you've already cruised the Danube and the Rhine and those places and you're looking for the next one. This could be the way you start. It's just such a stunning destination, and all of these destinations on the river is I think, going to be a great way to travel post-COVID, especially as we sort of ease back into getting around the world. These are all the things we said before, and I kind of harp on this, that Tauck does look after you from the moment you leave to the moment you get back. And a lot of people say that, but I arrived in Budapest for our river cruise, and I'd been traveling, I'd been working, and I sort of arrived without really thinking too much about it, because that's what you do when you work for the company, you don't plan it as well. And there was our Tauck guide waiting to meet us. They just said, just stand here for a second with your luggage and we'll get you straight onto the transfer. And as I said, from there on in, everything was taken care of. And everything was really well organised. I knew where to be, I knew what to do. But there was also this very relaxed part about being on a Tauck trip, where if you'd had a couple of big days of touring and you just wanted to wander around the local town instead of doing another tour, you could do that and there was no pressure. If you just wanted to grab one of the bicycles and ride along the Danube and see some of the towns there by yourself and experience it, you could do that as well. And we even took the bicycles from where we were going to take the river cruise back about 30 or 40 miles it was into Germany. 5 of us decided to ride, and then one of the Tauck directors came with us, because they said, well, we better look after you and make sure you get there, because we had to cross a border into Germany. So all these different experiences, I just can't believe it was over a few years ago, but I can't wait to get back and do that, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to traveling again. So that really is kind of the Tauck difference and what makes Tauck a little bit special. We've got great pride in our company. Arthur Tauck Jr., so Arthur Tauck Sr.'s son, is 88 years old. He is still heavily involved in the company. He reads, or used to read, all of the guest feedback forms. And he would sit there in his gazebo in Connecticut and he'd look for consistencies, either good ones or bad ones. And as soon as he spotted things, he'd feed it back to the guest relations team and say, there is an issue with this and we need to fix it. Or this is going great, let's do more of this. He jumped on a call the other day, and he's been living in Mexico, where he has a house, avoiding, I think, the US, he did say. And he just had a great chat to us and said, look, we've got through some really horrible things before. And he talked about his dad, and he talked about his son-in-law, who's now the CEO of the company, and the ethics and what we stand for. And he is so confident that, you know, we're going to get to the other side of this and we'll be a different company, but we'll still have the same values and we'll still have the same ethics of taking people on amazing journeys and showing them the world. So I'm very passionate about this, as you can hear. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Barry can pass them on to me if you don't have any right now. But we will be traveling again, and we hope that you will come with us. So Barry, I think that's kind of it for this very short presentation. Is there anything else that you'd like me to cover or answer? Or
no, that was great, David. Yeah. Thank you. And so far, no questions. If anybody has got a question, just pop it into the chat box. I have opened it up there for people to use. Just a few things. Some people may or may not know that in a previous life, I had a close relationship with Tauck as well, and have been lucky enough to travel on many, many tours and experience some incredible places. And just to reiterate some of the things that David says, a lot of tour operators say this, but Tauck really do open doors that you cannot open yourself, or other operators cannot open. And more importantly, introduce you to families, because Tauck being a family business, they introduce you to European families and other American families and share experiences with other family businesses. And that's very, very important. And also to touch on the fact with the the river cruises there. We looked at that slide that had the number of passengers on board the various vessels, and just to put some of those numbers into perspective, Tauck's largest ship carries about 130 guests, whereas most other operators are with about 190. And then you had the mid-range ship that was 80-something guests, where they're normally traveling with about 130. So that is a big difference in numbers when you're on a vessel with not only a cruise director but 3 tour directors that are delivering seamless service absolutely everywhere you go. And it's hard to see what that means when you start looking at a computer or you're listening to a live presentation. But when you are on a tour and you're there in destination, these touches just make everything absolutely seamless.
Well said, Barry.
But no, there is no questions there. But listeners, if you do have anything, there is a lot of people in the Bicton business that are Tauck accredited consultants, and our management team here is on the Tauck advisory board, so we can always speak to the people at Tauck and get questions answered. We've got a direct line through to David and his colleagues as well, so we can certainly answer your questions. And as Tauck always do, if you do make a booking, if there's something that jumps out, David will definitely honour that one night extra bonus time on Tauck for you, which is a considerable saving, particularly when you're staying at places like the Savoy or the Mandarin or other. So thanks, David. Really appreciate it, mate. Always great to chat, and I'm sure the listeners have found it very inspiring. And we'll be back in touch very soon. If we don't see you before, I know it's only November, but I might not speak to you. Have a great Christmas, David.
Thanks, Barry. All the best, everyone. Have a very safe Christmas. Talk to you soon.